It's been good. It's been quite interesting. I don't know if it's because I don't know, we're in Sag season, but like all this like love and relationship stuff is just like coming in my awareness from like all different angles. And it's so interesting because I was reading yeah, we just had the full moon in Gemini
Hmm.
not that long ago. And I was reading something about that. And you know how Gemini is all about communication. And so part of what it was saying was that it was talking about the connection between communication and connection. Which, I think we all know that communication is key to any relationship. But it was talking about that if we were to make close to 50% of our communication with other people open-ended questions, like be the one to initiate an open-ended question like 50% of the time, that we would have so much more mutual satisfaction in our relationship. So I've been
Yeah.
sitting with that and like, because it kind of resonated with me. I was like, I could see how that would be helpful, just to like stay curious, stay in a place where you're trying to understand the other person and just like really like get to know them like on a deeper level, even if you've known the person for years. It might even be more important to continue to ask open-ended questions with somebody that you think you know already.
Yes. Yes. Like not taking for granted that like you already know where they're coming from or that like you already know all the dimensions because every opportunity, like every interaction is an opportunity for a previously untapped dimension to present itself. And so you're holding a space for that. That sounds like some divine masculine energy to me.
Yeah, and it's like I've been practicing it. Like when I remember, like even with like my clients or just like, because I mean, I guess I do realize how like we can get in these conversations that are more just superficial or just more like, asking like more like yes, no questions or questions that really just require like a one word answer. So it's really been interesting, like asking more like open ended questions to like dive a little bit deeper.
That bit, um, oh, one of the things that I've been really, it's been in my awareness, and yeah, I feel like it's also coming off that full moon and Gemini energy. I've just been becoming so much more aware of how limited words are, like literacy, and relying on words only to be the communication.
Mm,
And yeah, so that like having that both that curiosity and the connection with my body of practicing really deep listening first too, like listening with my entire body, not only their words. Um, and I've become aware of a lot of blind spots that I had where I was really over focusing on just the words and also kind of like really eager, like over eager to like show, look how smart I am. Look at all these cool ideas I have. Look at all this like cool stuff I know. Like, and letting that kind of overtake me rather than being a little more grounded in like this is a reciprocal process right now. Like it doesn't have to be all about me and like what I'm excited to like show I know and like so yeah, it's just really I've become so much more aware and now I'm also trying to come to my interactions with like way more curiosity um because there's just with me being so like quick to only focus on the words and like how can I let those words then like feed into my words. It's like, I was like, I was definitely moving at a faster pace and yeah, just kind of limiting really like the richness and potential of every like smaller thing, you know? It's changing my experience of time too.
I'm so glad you said that because like I totally I mean I don't know if you've heard them say that like most of communication is actually nonverbal. So
Hmm.
like the body language, the eye contact, and not to mention, what you feel inside, like sensations
Mm.
or emotions. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I feel like communication is definitely more enhanced, it's more intelligent, it's more rich when it's like a full body experience. And I think the
Mm.
words, like you said, that's like the minimum. Like that's like the lowest percentage of, what is actually coming through. So yeah,
Yes.
the nonverbal stuff is huge. And probably just from our conditioning, we may have been just like programmed to focus more on the words because, I guess that's more concrete and maybe more objective, whereas the nonverbal stuff could be like, up for interpretation or, you're trying to read the person's energy. There's more opportunity to like maybe get it wrong, but yeah, it's definitely a full body for sure. And I mean, I've gotten to the place, even this podcast, Affairs of the Heart, listening to our hearts for guidance. I definitely have noticed that when I just like go off of what my mind is saying or just going off of words or I'm off track. Like I need that
Hmm.
body wisdom to talk to me and to let me know, like confirm what I'm hearing or even just like yeah, like I really have been noticing that my body, it leads the way. And I think it always has, but I think in the past I was resistant to that and I thought that I could override what my body was
Hmm.
saying by my mind saying, no, this is what we're doing. Like I thought I could just like override what my body was saying or what it wanted. And then I finally realized that I can't do that. Like I'm just not fulfilled. Things don't feel good. Like I have to actually like let my body lead. And my heart is a part of that.
Hmm. Yes. Oh my God. I have my theory about like part of where that conditioning comes from. Like, honestly, like, that's like white people culture.
In the head.
Going like, just going back to, yeah, like to be, okay, oh, look how smart I am there. But still, with like what I've studied of capitalism and colonialism and like kind of the ways those have like filtered out into culture and kind of have translated across cultural values and religious beliefs, there's definitely this overarching like uh energy that yeah deeply distrusts the body like religiously because of the whole oh no like our sinful bodies and our sinful urges we need to be pure so that we go to heaven. And
Mm-hmm.
like secondly like with capitalism and like all the slavery and colonialism that's like tangled up in that, like it serves um the machine of capitalism for people to be alienated from their bodies, to be numbed from their bodies, because it makes it easier for them to be exploited for labor. Like, and that literally was one of the really huge, like, behind the scenes motivations for like witch hunts and just a lot of other political socioeconomic turmoil that happened in Europe. They literally mounted this campaign of terror, like literally torture, as they changed the social order to turn um, populations into labor forces. And part of that was like with the torturing and social control, it was to change people's relationships to their bodies. And it was to change their relationship to nature, to the weather, so that they could be like shunted into that formula for capitalism. So ever since I read that in a book, Caliban and the Witch, and ever since I read that, that definitely was one of the big motivations for me. Like, I need to connect to my body again. I need to like take it back from capitalism and religion and like, oh my God.
So, like with the witch hunts, did they feel like the witches were too much in tune with their body and nature, so they had to
It
target them
was
specifically?
that and the way that that kind of wisdom was respected by the community. So it's not just that, yeah, they had that kind of relationship. It's also that other people looked to them as leaders and trusted their leadership, that
Uh-huh.
what they could provide, their services.
Okay.
And so part of like targeting those people as witches and burning them, that is what also made this vacuum for like, well, who's the authority now? Like, who do we listen to? We listen to the doctor. We listen
Oh,
to only science. We listen to only these like, and yeah, like I'm pretty sure that you're seeing that connection too between like our current like sick care system, like not our healthcare system. It's just about
right.
sickness. That,
Exactly.
yeah, like that alienation, like, oh no, what does the doctor say? Like, no one else has this like authority except for, oh no, what does the doctor say? Like, we
Mm,
really grew up with this inheritance of like, you don't know your body, only the doctor does.
right. Yeah, it's like this over reliance on the doctor, you know,
Yeah,
which
as if like
yeah,
we can't, like, as if our own feeling doesn't count as information that we can interpret. Yeah, it's nuts.
mm, yes, it is nuts. It is nuts, because I mean, like you said, the sick, what you call it, sick care?
Yeah, I like read that on someone's comment. I was like, yeah, that's what it is.
That's so true. That is so true. Um, but yeah, there's so many flaws with, at least in the West, with the way
Mm,
that it's run and managed and the kickbacks from prescription companies. I mean,
right? All
so
these
it's,
other agendas.
yeah. So it's so crazy that, a lot of people still see that as their source of healing when something is wrong.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that thing how you were talking about, like your mind, like when you were trying to override with your mind and like just experiencing and finally noticing, like, wow, that really doesn't fucking work. I need to stop leading with my mind. Exactly. And then there's all these people who are like so sick, but like with where they're at, like they don't have like they're not, it's sad, and they're just not ready. They're not ready to consider, oh my God, maybe I need to try something new instead of trusting these fucking like paradigms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the
Mm.
light bulb moment. I guess we all have to get there at our own pace.
It is a big nervous system thing, is one thing that I've literally been going through. Like, so, um, one of the connections that I was making as I was, yeah, having these kinds of insights on that Gemini energy, um, I've become so much more aware of like this um correlation between when my ego's in that story and kind of like, especially if it is an ungenerous or unkind kind of judgment on a situation or a person, that's like a major clue for me. Like, oh, I'm pretty sure this is my ego fucking running. And then when I like check into my body, like my nervous system, like I see the signs in my body that my nervous system is also in that kind of like, holy shit, like I'm in trouble, I'm in danger, I need to like find the way out, I need to find the solution. And so, like, when I go and do my vagus nerve activation stuff and get my nervous system like settled and grounded, then it's so like the ego story just turns off. So it's like,
Mm.
oh, this has been very fucking helpful.
Well, congrats on being able to like work with that in real time.
Thank you. You too. You've been having some fun fucking breakthroughs.
Yes, we've been having some breakthroughs over here. Yes.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody too, about getting to that place where in real time you can see what you're doing. Like you could see a pattern playing out,
Mm.
and then you could choose like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to do what I've always
Mm.
done, or do I want to try something new? And I mean, like, I feel like when you can get to that place, it's just like you're on the road to like mastery at that point.
Mhm.
Because if you could do it once, you could do it again.
Yeah, it really is more like, I feel like one of the other things that happens when we're in story and when we're in ego, like you get really overly focused on the details, whereas if you're more grounded in your body, it's easier to see the bigger picture, and that's when you see the patterns, and that's when you can see the opportunities for like, oh, I actually have a choice right here. I can actually pause and consider like a choice versus like, yeah, one of the other things, it's like we're so deeply conditioned by, you know, everything. I don't want to rehash it again. But still like so deeply conditioned to like, we've had so many choices taken away from us that then we just do it to ourselves. Like, I don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, it's just running on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So, do we want to talk about that clip from Instagram?
Oh, yes. I was hoping. I was like, when should we talk about it?
So, that clip, it was so funny when I saw it because I recently has experienced that conversation where I was asked like, why am I single? Like, you're so beautiful, you're so magnetic, like people are drawn to you, people, you know, like you have this energy, like I don't understand. And so the first time I was asked that question recently, I basically was like, well, first of all, it's not that I don't want to be in a relationship, because for some reason I was getting that vibe. Like maybe I'm single because I don't want to be with anybody. And I was like, well, first of all, it's not that. But since like 2022, it's like a switch. Yeah, 2022. Yeah, like something like switched off in me. And all of a sudden, I was like, I need to get my finances in order. Like, I need to get my career in, like just like get it on track, get it more sustainable. So I was just kind of like, it was like a literally like a switch. Like I was just all about my finances. I was signing up for business courses. I was signing up for financial coaching. You know, like it was just all about that. And so that's where like most of my energy was going. And it's not that I wasn't open to meeting people or open to dating or anything like that, but it wasn't like at the forefront. It wasn't like at the
Mm-hmm.
forefront. So I explained that, like, yeah, my energy was just like super focused on my financial situation. And then, but that's a fair question. Like, we just finished talking about being curious. So that's, a fair question, trying to get to know somebody. But then I was surprised when I got asked that question again by the same person. So I was like,
Oh, same person. It's like, oh,
yes,
were you not listening?
I know. So I was like, all right, well, maybe it's because the first time we were on the phone and now we're face to face. So like, we just finished talking about body language and communication. I'm like, all right, maybe they want to ask me in person and see if I don't know. So I answered the question again. And then I'm pretty sure I said the same thing. Um, and then like a few weeks later, I got asked again. So I was by the same person. So I was
Same
like,
person.
wait a minute. And what and
Right?
what dawned on me was what the girl was saying in the Instagram video was that people think that there's a problem with you. Like, what are you not telling me? What is like, is it a red flag? Like they think there's something wrong, and that's why. So that's what I was getting from like the repeated asking. So, but what I realized just from the person keep asking me was, so part of it is what I just said, how I was focusing since 2022, I've been really focusing on my finances. And also I got out of a relationship in 2020. I'm surprised I didn't mention that. Yeah, I got out of a relationship in 2022. So, and I said that on the phone. So, but also what I realized too was that, and she said this too in the video, that she can't get with just anybody. And that is something that ties into following my heart, listening to my body's wisdom, is that I realized recently that I can't just say, okay, this guy looks good on paper, or it would make sense for me to be with somebody like this, or this person meets all the things on my quote unquote list. I'm going to be with this person. That's what I used to do in the past. And what took me so many years to realize is that 9 times out of 10, my heart wasn't on board with those people. And I powered through because I was like, well, this person's
Mm-hmm.
good on paper, or this person, they have the qualities that I want, or this person, it makes sense for me to be with a person like this. But my heart wasn't on board and I could feel it, but I was still like, I'm going to keep going with this. And being in a relationship where my heart is not involved, it doesn't work because number one, I'm half-hearted. I'm not, like, all of me is not, I'm not all in because my heart is not in. So even though like I might be doing the right things and saying the right things and, being a good girlfriend or whatever, there was a huge part missing. Like there was no heart, at least from my perspective. And it took me a long time to really see that for some reason. Like I just didn't make the connection. And so that is also too a reason why I can go quite, some quite a long period in between relationships because my heart has to choose. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people come into my cipher and I'm like, oh, this person looks like the kind of person I want to be with. And my heart is like, no. Like my heart and my body says no. And so I trust that. And I'm like, well, I guess it's a no. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's really, I'm wondering why there's such a I don't know, people just take for granted like the heart follows a timeline according to, I don't even know what fucking timeline. But yeah, like, why is it so crazy? It's only 2023 that, like, because you broke up and you got focused. It's like, why is that so fucking crazy to believe that, like, a perfectly amazing human being is just like chilling after her last relationship? Like, why are you expecting that journey to conform to any kind of like, why? Just why? Why, Leah?
Well, I think a big part of it is, and I think you kind of touched on this too when we were texting about this, is that a lot of people feel like they can't be alone. And and that goes for it being alone in terms of not being in a relationship to just being alone in the house on a Friday night. Like they need some kind of external companionship, some kind of external stimulation, distraction, whatever the case may be. It's like they're not comfortable just being with themselves. And they think that they have to be with somebody, even if it's just whatever, like it's just a fling. They know this is not their person. It's just like they really, and I knew this from years ago when a friend of mine, we were talking about, I don't know, I think she was in a relationship, it wasn't working. And I think maybe I had just got out of something. And she said to me, she would rather be in a bad relationship than not be in a relationship at all. And that's when
Oh.
you realize that there are people who, for whatever reason, they need to be involved with somebody. And I mean, I can relate to that because back in the day, I was like that. I was just going back to back to back. Like I would have like once I saw a relationship was like on the rocks, and I'm like, you know what? We all know when a relationship is not going to make it. We might be trying to make it work or in denial, but the writing is on the wall. And I mean, there were times where I would just have somebody lined up waiting in the wings. Like, all right, no, it's
Ooh.
not going to work. Don't work. I'm calling him. Like, I already knew who I was going to call. Like, I was that
Leah.
person. For decades. Just like there was no downtime in between. It was just like one after the next. And I don't know what broke the cycle, but at a certain point, the cycle got broken. And I was able to really like sit with what am I doing? What even happened in these last relationships? It's like you don't even have time to process what happened, what went wrong. Was it, like when you just going back to back and that final pause really helped me to see the value and not just going back to back and being on the rebound and using this new person to get over the old person. And, like, I don't understand, like, why is it okay to be on the rebound and use people to get over the old person or just to distract, like, I mean, I've done it
Mhm.
too. But once that cycle got broken, I realized that, you know what, I don't want to go back to that. Like, if something doesn't work out and it was like a deep relationship where I really, cared for this person, I'm going to need some downtime to, like, first of all, grieve the loss and process what happened. What did I learn from this? What am I going to do differently going forward? So I don't understand why it's a problem to be in between relationships. Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah, listening to you lay out the pattern and also in myself with like what I've been learning, because I've been changing a lot of behaviors of um like just now that I have so much like reconnected tissue, literally, like from our last conversation. It's like tissue that used to be numb is like connected now and sensational now. And I just have
Mm,
so much more information coming in.
beautiful.
So, yeah. So I'm having like, so there's a lot of stuff just super small but still profound in like my daily routines, catching where I was just like filling my attention because I had this fear of being still, being silent, because again, like that old tenacious stress response of like, oh no, like I'm in danger, I need to fix something, like that is like turned off so well now. And before, like when it was still on, like that's why I was avoiding the silence, that's why I was avoiding the stillness, and also just like fear of feeling, because like we are conditioned so much, like whether it's from trauma or just from cultural values, feeling is just so not valued.
And
Um,
scared. Like people are terrified to feel their
yeah,
feelings, like
yeah.
certain feelings. Like they would
Hmm.
rather, like I remember years ago I was dating this guy, and he had a child, and Father's Day had came up. And so I'm not one of those people who, when it's Father's Day or Mother's Day, I feel compelled to tell every father and mother Happy Mother's Day. I know there's people that do that, but for some reason, like I never felt compelled to do that. And so anyway, like Father's Day had came up, and I think I spoke to him maybe like later on in the evening because I figured he would be with his son, maybe. But anyway, when I
Hmm.
finally spoke to him, I was like, "Oh, how was your Father's Day? How did it go?" And he was telling me that, it was cool. And he was like, "Yeah, all these people reached out to him to wish him a happy Father's Day." He was like, "Yeah, everybody except you." And I was
Oh,
like,
cute.
"What?" And I was like, "You're not my father." And he was like, "Oh, well, I just thought, I would have heard from you and blah, 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 blah." So I was like, "All right." So anyway, so I was like, okay, mental note. He wants to hear that Father's Day from me. But anyway, maybe like a couple days later, like I filled out a little card. Like I have these blank little cards where you can just write what you want to write. And so I wrote a little note in it, just like affirming that, I think he's a great father, which I do. Like I just wrote down some acknowledgments of what I see and know about him as
Mm.
far as like him being a good father. And so I gave it to him. Like I think I gave it to him like a couple days after Father's Day. And I gave it to him in the morning. And then because we had work together at that time. So I gave it to him in the
Mm.
morning at work. And so like the whole day had gone by and he didn't say anything about it. So I was like, okay, interesting. He said he wanted to hear something from me. I wrote this like heartfelt, authentic note all day, nothing. And then it wasn't until like that. So I left work, like I left before him, went home. And then later that night, I think he called or something. And I was like, "Did you read the card that I gave you?" And he was like, "Oh, I just now read it." And he was like, "Oh, I was scared to open it earlier because I didn't know what it said."
Oh.
And I was like, "What?" So I realized, like, I guess I don't know what he thought it said, but the point is that there was some kind of emotional response he had by me giving him this card out the blue. Maybe he didn't think it had anything to do with Father's Day, but I guess his mind went to like a worst case scenario. And
Mm.
then that led him to not open the card because he was like, "Oh, I didn't want to open it at work and then like have my whole mood be whatever."
Yeah, yeah.
But it just speaks to that fact of how terrified people are of emotions. It's like they fear it. They feel like they won't be able to handle it if it comes up. And then it's like, what am I going to do with the rest of my day if I'm feeling, like people are really
Mm-hmm.
terrified. And I mean, you and I know that emotions is in the realm of the feminine energy. So again, it's like the feminine energy is feared and almost like demonized in a way. Like you just want to like stay away from her, suppress her, you know,
Yeah.
not go anywhere near
Yeah.
her because she can destroy everything. She could ruin my whole day.
Oh, yeah. And one of the things I can imagine, I just in my mind, it was conjured a boy in college. I did write him a wild ass letter and probably ruined his day when he read it because it was full of but so okay, so one of the things I'm also like thinking of, or like that this is bringing up for me that I've been noticing in my work over the years, it's like, oh, also there is a nuance, a difference between feeling and then all of the like ego story that people can be really caught up in, especially
Mm,
because they have a tenacious stress response activated. Their nervous system is telling them there's a threat that needs to be addressed. And then they go like grabbing for all these maladaptive coping skills. And then they dump this like wild ass projected story onto another person. And they think that they're sharing their feelings when they're actually like in a
mm,
really heavy like stress response. And so I also, yeah, can understand why for some people, especially when they're really far out and like not well resourced,
mm,
like not knowing the difference, like there is a really beautiful place where like you can feel all these things and you're going to feel the entire spectrum, and that is going to come with its own challenges and discomforts, and that is different from like, yeah, like going through these like really stressful, really draining, very accusatory, not in that curiosity communication energy of connection, like yeah, and like yeah, I've definitely gone through in my all my situationships and stuff, like, oh, that is just something. If you don't, I guess if you grew up in a healthy family, like you know how to actually talk about your feelings and not do the whole trauma dumping. But for
mm,
a lot of us who did not grow up in healthy families, we don't know, like, just the blessings of the universe somehow when we're ready connect us to learning like, oh, I was trauma dumping, I was not sharing my feelings, I was like in a whole fucking like agitated, escalated stress thing.
mm. Yeah, that is so true. And it's true. Like most of us, we weren't taught this. Like nobody we knew how to do this. So we weren't
Mm-hmm.
taught it. And yeah, I mean it's really a blessing if somehow you stumble across these teachings, and start to practice them. But like you said, it really is such a game changer to be able to untangle what your mind is saying about situations and just
Mm.
deal with the raw
Mm.
sensations of
Mm.
the emotions that you are feeling in your body. Like if you can untangle the story from it, that is a game changer.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I
But
do
getting to that
feel
place, yeah, that's the key.
I feel like there's definitely a lot of dharma around the path unfolding of start, if you don't already know that, of how you go and learn that. And like it really, I don't know, this is also now bringing up for me priestess shit. And because like the thing with a priestess, it's like a completely self-chosen, self-initiated, just like inner like choice, an inner commitment. Like there's no outside authority who's like, "Ooh, you are a priestess now." It's like, no, bitch. Like I am the one who ordained myself priestess. And like, yeah, so to like start attracting or like receiving these opportunities to learn that skill, like to
Mhm.
start having that healing journey, uh, it's just like you're the only person who can decide, you know what, I want to listen to my heart now. I'm
Mm.
deciding that my heart is important. I'm deciding that my heart is valuable. I'm deciding like, and that's what just it's magic. It's like
Mm.
people can talk all day long at you, but you're the only one who can actually choose, you know?
Yeah. And I guess like any transformation that someone wants, like they're more likely to get it when it's self-motivated. So
Mm-hmm,
when something
mm-hmm.
in you is like, okay, I want that. Like even though you may not know how you're going to get it, but you know that you want that. You want that upgrade, you want that level up, you want these new skills. Um yeah. And then
Mm.
you'll do the work because that desire is coming from a deeper place. It's not like somebody is
Yeah.
telling you you should do it or like your partner is like you should, like you want to do it.
It has its own energy, which is part of what makes it more powerful. Because, like, all the other stuff that comes from, yeah, the external forces or the brain stories, like, those don't have the same, like, vitality that actual desires generated from your heart have. And
Mm,
it's like, that's like a metaphysical, spiritual thing.
yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
Mm. Do
Yes.
you, I now you got me like curious about like, ooh, so is there anything like calling you lately, Leah? Like you already talked about that change in like communication, but yeah, I'm wondering, are there any other like unknown desires presenting themselves now or like things becoming stronger?
Yeah, so it's funny. So I think it was sometime this week, this post had popped up in my feed. And usually I don't click on these kind of posts, but this one, like I said, for some reason, like love, romance, it's like in my
Mm.
face right now. It's in my awareness. So I guess that's my heart. Um, but it was one of those like cheesy, almost like sketchy posts that was like, say these three words and like he like he'll never leave you or like keep him coming back. One of those like weird, and I was just like, what's the three words? I was just like, like, well, what's these three words if you say this,
Mm.
whatever, whatever. And so of course it was like this long, drawn out presentation. I was getting so frustrated. I'm like, will you just say the three words? Like, why are you going through all this? Like, I can't believe I fell for this. Like, I really thought you were just gonna say the three words. So long story short, he never really did. He wanted you to buy something or whatever. But he dropped the little things here and there, which I kind of like pieced it together. So basically, what he was saying was that to attract love and to keep love, you want to constantly give this person like rushes of dopamine. I don't know if you've heard that before. Have you heard that before?
I've heard it used as an argument for like, oh, this isn't actually love, it's just a fucking dopamine addiction.
It's funny. I have heard that too. I have heard that too. But kind of like, so from what he said, I like kind of like connected it to things that I've heard maybe like over the past couple years. And so what he was saying was one of the easiest ways to do it is to like give compliments and to give appreciation, like let him know you appreciate him. And it's interesting that he said that because not that long ago, like I've had some conversations with men who actually expressed to me that they feel a ways that they don't get compliments. They're like, as women, we kind of take it for granted that all day long we're getting compliments. Like we walking down the street, men are telling us we're beautiful. You know, like compliments are just flowing. Women might compliment our outfit or whatever, our
Mm.
hair or makeup, skin. Like we just are used to getting compliments. And these men were telling me that they hardly get any compliments. And I actually was kind
Oh.
of surprised by that because I'm someone that I often give people compliments, including men. Like it's nothing for me to like give a man a compliment. So that's something that I'm pretty free with. Like I feel like I give it, pretty freely. But
Mm.
it was interesting that, these two men had told me that they hardly ever get compliments. And the way they said it, I could tell that, well, one, it was obvious he wanted compliments, and the other one, it wasn't so obvious, but I could tell that he wouldn't mind getting them. So
No.
I was like, so I thought that was interesting. So that kind of like affirmed, what I had heard previously about that. And then also too, somewhere along the line, I also had heard, I think it was in the book Attached that I read that talks about, the attachment styles that people can have. And so, a big part of that book is them talking about how you can create more of a secure attachment style if you don't already have that, like if you're anxious or avoidant. And so one of the things that they said was, and I think they might have used the word dopamine. If they didn't use dopamine, maybe they used oxytocin, but it was some kind of
Mm.
hormone. And they said that one of the ways to like keep your relationship more secure and I guess more like loving in general is if you, I think they said, if the last time you see the person, you give them like a good hug. It's almost like
Mm.
something that gets released in the hug. It lessens because of the hormones that get released, like it lessens the odds of there being like any ill feelings between you two. Like something like it buys you like a couple of
Mm.
days. It was something very specific. Like they said, like, so I'm assuming this is if you don't live with the person, or maybe even if you do.
Mm.
They were saying like every couple days, like make sure like there's like a good hug. And I guess it's probably any kind of like close physical contact, but I think they said
Mm.
hugs. Um, and they were definitely like tying it to like some kind of hormone that gets released that basically like it keeps the relationship more in the more in a harmonious place than if you didn't have that kind of physical contact. So I just thought
Mhm.
this was interesting, like this whole thing about these hormones. Like
Like
you
our
could
literal chemistry.
right, exactly. Like
Yeah.
this is where I guess these things come from. And even like the pheromones, how they say like I guess maybe like when we're in like our ovulation, we're more magnetic. Maybe we're giving off
Mm.
something like, so there's something I guess to be said about, yeah. So it just has me very curious, about these hormones and, you know, like not leaving things to chance. Like something I would say that maybe I've noticed about myself is that I think in previous relationships, I may have been more on the passive side of like just expecting things to work out, especially because we love each other or we care for each other, and maybe not doing certain things to like help it along, you know? So it just has me thinking like just these
Mm.
things that they're saying and it just has me thinking. And I guess part of it too is like knowing the person's love language and filling them up in the ways that make them feel loved maybe that has something to do with these hormones, these dopamines or the oxytocins and stuff like that. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. So I'm kind of like, just, it's in my awareness, like this
Mm.
whole topic. And something else that I also heard recently, which I could really see how this can make a difference in a relationship, is not letting disagreements linger, which is something I, you know, used to do. So like, let's say like you got in an argument with your person and now nobody's talking. And like maybe a day goes by or 2 days go by, or and so they were saying like from an attachment point of view, this is very stressful for both people actually, because the longer you go without resolving the conflict and or without speaking, the person feels like the relationship is threatened. And depending on, where their mindset is at, they might think it's over. And so it's like the longer you take to resolve it, the stress response and the ill feelings and the bad memories the person has, it
Mm.
goes into long-term memory. And so,
Mm.
which I've seen that, where like people that I got into it with, they would bring up stuff from the past. And I'm like, why are they bringing this up? It went into long term memory. And on the flip side, the man was saying, he was a psychologist, he was saying that if you resolve disagreements sooner rather than later, or even if you don't resolve it right away, but you let the person know, you know what, I'm still mad at you. I'm not able in a place to really talk about it right now, but we're okay.
Mm.
Even just doing that, he said the experience, it won't go into their long-term memory. So it's like it really behooves us to solve these disagreements, or at least let the person know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still mad at you. Like it still might not be resolved, but let them know the relationship is not, it's not on the rocks where it might be over. Just letting them have that
Mm.
reassurance, the experience won't go into their long-term memory. And so they
Mm.
won't have like it's deep. I was like, oh my gosh. So like all this stuff is just like bubbling up now. I don't know why it's bubbling up, but it's bubbling up.
Yeah. I feel like I'm seeing a thread like running underneath all of that. It's this like primal interdependent need for co-regulation where
Mm,
yeah, it literally is like at that level of the body's chemistry and like hormones and stuff and like the nervous system too being like a mediator of that and like whatever reality the nervous system experiences, yeah, those are the hormones that are released and those totally affect your brain and the kind of thoughts you start having.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also like and it's just so sad because it's like once you one thing that has really profoundly like penetrated my understanding finally is just like the whole thing of like people's needs need to be met before they can do well. Like and there are just so many ways that I know for me, I'll speak for myself. Like I think I really internalized this very like harsh bootstraps like um kind of like perfectionist proving mentality where like I expected the people that I had feelings for to behave certain ways with me and I just had completely zero sense of like both of us feeling vulnerable and both of us like needing some reassurance and co-regulation and both of us like having needs that probably need to be met so that we can feel safe to give more of the things that we want to give each other anyways. Just we need to feel safer first. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that when you and this is a big thing. I think when you don't feel safe, in the union or whatever, it's so hard to tend to that other person's needs. It's like that, it's like it's almost
Mm,
like that's the first thing that goes out the window because
mm,
now you are in like survival mode or like
mhm,
the stress response is up and you're just trying to feel safer. So thinking about that other
mhm,
person, that's the first thing that goes,
mhm.
and their needs and what they
Yeah,
want. You're just trying to protect yourself. You go into self-protection.
yeah, yeah. And start using the egos. It's so weird. Like the ego is just so fascinating to me. Like specifically, like I know that that can mean a lot of different things for people, but for me, like I always think of the ego in more of the like Jungian psychology alchemy kind of context for it, where the ego is, yeah, fixated on these more material status approval validation things it's seeking from people constantly. And like, so when you have that survival, like self-protection mode on, it's like if you're not at least in the practice of like making sure you don't use your ego to try to find your way out of it, because it's like, oh, ego, you're so bad at this. Your ideas are so fucking useless. Like, you're so not helpful. Is yeah, because it'll, instead of being vulnerable and creating a space for connection that can help reestablish safety, the ego is just gonna go like nuts and try all these like crazy power games and like manipulation and like all these crazy stories.
Oh, yes, it's gonna go. Yes, yes, and it's gonna do what it's always done,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10 never worked. But it's just that's all it can do. It can't come up. It's like in that place, your creativity goes out of the window. So like creative
Yeah.
solutions, the bigger picture, like none of that is available to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. So that's why um like I feel like it's important to do things in the correct order, in the sense that, like, okay, look, first of all, if your nervous system and like just baseline wellness is not turned on, like none of these other tactics work, because they're going to be filtered through that like literal sense of reality where, yeah, you have tunnel vision, you're not seeing the bigger picture. So anything you do doesn't matter because you have this super limited vision turned on. You got to make
Right.
sure you're like grounded, safe, regulated, and then you start trying the other stuff.
Yeah, like sometimes the best thing you could do is take a break. Like take a
Mm,
break and tend to your nervous system, your needs, and that's where you still want to take care of that other person. See, that's the piece that I was missing. You still want to let that person know you're coming back. Like, let them
mm,
know I can't talk about this right now. I'm too activated. I'm too triggered. I'm going to say something that, probably going to regret. And
mm,
so I need to take a time out, but I'll be back. I actually spoke to a friend about this recently. We were talking about this, and I was telling him this, and he was saying it was interesting though because he told me something that I didn't consider, and so I thought that was a good thing to be like, you know what, I need to take a time out. I need to calm down, blah 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 blah, but I'll be back. And maybe you could tell him when you'll be back. Okay, and he was saying how, from his perspective, um, he's seen it backfire where now when you're ready to talk, depending on how long it took, that other person was left with their own thoughts about what just happened. And, like they were ready to talk, you weren't. And so in that time gap, this person is left with their own thoughts, the turmoil of things not being, resolved and what have you. And then he said he's seen it where now that person that's ready to talk wants to talk. Now the other person don't want to talk, you know? So they're like, you know what? I don't want to, like, so it's interesting. I guess there's no like formula. There's no like, okay, this is the way it needs to be. But I'm glad he just pointed that out because I didn't consider that piece. That
Mm.
what is that other person going through while you're calming yourself down and trying to get to a place where you can talk? Like what's happening with them and their nervous system being in like this holding pattern.
But then, yeah, like that is the journey and discovery of relationships. Like, can you do what's best for yourselves together? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then where that starts to diverge too much, then like you got to make the choice of like, I, me doing what's best for myself is something that you cannot fucking hang with. So goodbye.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
It's just like, and like, I really, this was something that I think, again, it's for me, I categorize it as, again, being from that ego place of trying to control everything. It's like, also, all of these tools are just for you to like try out to see what works best for you and what helps you do what's best for you and like be in the relationship. They're not necessarily like, here's the magic wand to make everything happen the way that you want it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're tools. They're tools that you can pull out and play around with and
And
see
that
what.
is, yeah, that's the trickster sense of humor of the universe being like, ah ha ha, see, it can go anyway, no matter what you do.
Exactly, 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 exactly. Yep,
Hmm. That's
so
why
true.
we need to also, well, it's helped me cultivate an insane sense of humor because it's like, wow, you are a chaotic bitch, universe. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. But so on that note, I'm feeling ready to head out. How are you feeling, Leah?
yeah, this is good.
Mm, I'm complete. I'm full. I'm overflowing. I'm ready to burst. Okay. Yes, I'm so glad we got our chance to connect. This is a lot of fun. Thank you, Leah. Okay, bye.